Hey everybody, it is that Tuesday and I'm sitting here with one of my besties and we are about to talk about something that I live with 28/9 rather than 24/7. Stress. Lori, stress.
What about it?
All of it.
Suffering with it. All right. So I promised you a long talk, and this is going to be more like a therapy / education. Sometimes I have to educate people about this, and mostly I have to educate them about it because very few people really make the full connection between what they're dealing with in their life and what happens in their sex life. So I've probably said this before, whatever happens in the bedroom happens in real life, whatever happens in real life happens in the bedroom. What I mean by that is that, like, if you're stressed out sexually, it affects the quality of your daily life. And if you're stressed out terribly in your daily life, it'll probably affect the quality of your sex life. So you can't have one without the other. Sex is part of the integrated whole wellness experience of being a human being. So if wherever your stress is high, you can expect some kind of dysfunction. So sometimes it manifests, and that was something, that's something I've addressed in conversations with older women, is that sometimes it manifests in your health, and you develop a lot of stress disorders, some of which by the time you get them, it's hard to turn them back. But what contributes greatly, vastly to things like fibromyalgia, certainly depression, becoming sedentary, can all really be the result of being overwhelmed and overstressed. And through bad habits over many years, or an inability to find a place of peace, you're hurting your body. You really are. So for me as a sexologist, what's interesting is that sometimes people come to me and they've seen all the, I've seen guys who had ED and they've been through all the testosterone therapies with urologists and taken pills and nothing worked. And sometimes I have women who have their vagina, muscles of their vagina tighten up so that sex is either painful or almost impossible because it's hard to get something inside it. So they go through dilators and it really doesn't work. And then they get stressed out about the dilators and can't get them in. And with only one exception, the people who've come to me for those unique problems, they've been to doctors and stuff, or they think they know medicine and they know their own body well enough. They don't realize that actually they're dealing with stress. And only in one case did I actually tell somebody that she really, something was probably off with her hormonally. Because, one key to understanding if it's organic, physical, and you need an MD, or if it's emotional / psychological, is to masturbate. If you can have a normal orgasm from masturbating, that's not what you're not dealing with an underlying problem. You're probably dealing with how you feel about sex, which may be dictated by the level of stress in your relationship, or low self-esteem, which gives you a lot of stress. So that's how sexologists like me often find ourselves working to mitigate stress for our clients. Any questions?
Actually, my first one would be, because it is, stress can be almost anywhere in anything. How do you get someone to begin to try and figure out, for lack of a better way of putting it, which, how much stress they're reacting to. Because life is filled with stress, some good, most not, but nevertheless. Um, do you have to turn
I would
off?
say excitement is good. Stress is not good, but stress in certain circumstances can be pretty benign.
But Gloria, a whole lot of people can't tell the difference at this point because we live with stress all the time.
All right. So I was trying to think, I may come up with more later because I told you I want to write about this. But what I'm seeing in my practice, okay, is pretty much 4 sources of stress, right? So I think the first step for me when I work with the client is trying to understand what's causing their stress, because for each type of stress, there's a different approach. So for example, some people get stressed out from a trauma that they know they've been through. We call that PTSD, but actually everybody has PTSD to some degree, right? Because none of us get through life without some kind of traumatic event, even if it happened before we remembered it. Like, for example, being adopted. We have found that even when the kid is adopted at 3 months and has no memory of their first parent, they may still feel, the infant might have felt traumatized by that experience, just doesn't have a conscious memory. So, but usually what we call PTSD is when you have flashbacks, painful memories, can't stop reliving the past.
Okay. Okay.
But then, as mentioned with like adopted kids show a pattern of higher anxiety than most, or more internal stress. So that's because stress can also come from unremembered trauma. Like, we don't all remember what happened to us when we were 4 and 5. We don't remember if, we may have even blocked it out permanently, whether somebody said something really shitty to us, or, bullied us, or if one day our aunt suddenly announced that we were all going to hell, and, because we were sinners, and, unless you did X, Y, Z, and you don't know which kid it might hit.
Also true.
Right? But that kid may never even remember it. What they may carry with them, though, is the way that they felt in that moment that scared the bejesus out of them. So let's say that's, remember when there was that whole deal about recovered memories and stuff?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you can't recover what's gone. I don't believe you can recover what's gone. You can recover. I mean, and people telling you what you might have felt or how you might, no. But if you can't remember it, all you can do is just try to accept that it probably happened, because logically you can deduce it. So you grew up super poor, for example. That's a good reason to be very stressed out. If you overhear your parents arguing about money, or if there's a lot of discord in the house, or you have to move a lot into new places and go to new schools and never have the clothes that the kids around you have, and never have the gadgets they have, or never get to see the cool shows or movies, you're not going to remember it, but you can at least form an opinion about what it might have been like to be a child in circumstances like that.
Okay.
Now, the easier stress, of course, is when it's here and now. Something just went wrong with your health or your partner's health. I'm sure you suffered a lot over Jill's heart attack. And I'm sure that even if you push the thoughts away and go on being your powerful, optimistic self as you are and moving forward, in the back of your mind, your wife of 50 years had a heart attack. So I would certainly expect you to feel more stressed out, just like I've really been working it because my husband just died of 32 years. So I know that that stress and that memory doesn't just, you don't just snap out of it one day.
True.
It may always be with me. I
True.
have to be prepared for that and to not let it hurt me by trying to do like better self-care. That
Now,
kind of
stop. This is where I want to stop, because the next question comes in right here. How do you transpose the understanding intellectually of what's going on into the emotional understanding so that it doesn't, or so that you can begin to heal the rest of it?
How much you really can heal from stress really depends on the individual. It's like
Ouch.
everything else in this world. You know, it's some weird mixture of how you were raised and what your expectations were, and are you getting a lot of therapy, or do you have a support group that can see you through times and give you an opportunity to talk about it and work it through? Are you just a super resilient person? But sometimes there are people who are resilient on the outside and mushmallows on the inside.
Okay.
And sometimes they're mushmallows on the outside and icy steel on the inside. So it is hard, but not impossible to heal yourself, but it's work.
Okay.
Healing stress is not a passive enterprise. And that's why I say, like, the last big stressor is, you know, some people cannot handle the way the world is. They were raised with the expectation that what? That all people were fairly reasonable and born to be good and, you know, stuff like that. And the political unrest,
Yes.
economic situation, racism, homophobia, transphobia, anti-Semitism, if you're one of the people affected by that, just seeing it in the world can be traumatic. And of course,
No.
our current plague. So right now, COVID has been top of everybody's mind for almost 3 years now, 2 full years, going into our third. So it is important to know what kind of stress is really going on. There are certain things that a therapist can do. So I'm going to start with stress from the world. Like this past year, I have advised a number of clients to quit reading so much news and to not get involved in their political bubble fights. Because I had a couple of clients who went crazy following Trump.
I understand, believe me.
You know, and I felt like Will did, my husband did too. You know, he just, boy, he hated Trump, you know, and I felt like he was re-traumatizing himself every day because he would go to all the angry, not Bo, who's always calm, but like some of the other people who were talking were very excited and constantly outraged.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the lefty version of Rush Limbaugh, you know, and I thought, boy, that's just no good. Because, you know, they made it all, I can't say worse than it was, but all of that anger and rage is really bad for a person who's got stress. And if you don't already have stress, that's going to stress you out. Right? But so you need to know.
Yeah.
And then, for example, if it's just what's happening in your life, health issues, your relatives' issues, your relationships, your job, stuff like that. Sometimes there are practical solutions to improving all of that. and how you treat people and how you take care of yourself and attitudes that you take and learning some tolerance or making decisions to to pull away from people, things that people are usually very reluctant to do, but which they can do and can do kind of quickly, and which bring them enormous relief. Like even, a lot of us feel like if we have moms, we're at their mercy. So they can call us whenever, even if it's 12 times a day, to talk about nothing. And, you don't have to be her enabler in that way. You can make other healthy choices that do not harm the relationship, but allow you to have a boundary where you can get some room to breathe, right? So that's kind of thing. Now,
Boundary. That's another interesting word.
yeah.
Boundary.
What we know, everything we do in S&M should be applied. I mean, the philosophy should be applied in daily life.
Keep talking.
I just mean, like not giving people power unless you consent to it for a good reason.
Okay.
It's like, you don't have to be that obedient to what your bank is telling you. They're the bank. They want to make money off you. You don't have to get anxious about shit. But anyway, now, trauma-driven stress, that's where it gets hard and tricky. And that's the kind of thing that I would encourage people, to talk about in support groups or with therapists. Because there you have to do a lot of, first of all, again, you have to understand what happened to you, what caused it, and then you have to look at that from your perspective as an adult. And I do a lot of work on that because a lot of people, you got to consider that most people who carry sexual shame, which is about half of my practice, let's say, or 40% of my practice at any given time, are people who can't overcome their shame and they have difficulty living their fetish, or difficulty introducing kink in the relationship, or relationships that are on the rocks over their kink, and so it's very important to know, for example, and this is the vaginismus too, which is, well, do you remember a trauma in your life that might have made you feel uncomfortable about your vagina? I don't just ask it. I'm doing that for you right now, and just cold clinical things are much kinder with people and, walk them more delicately into these questions. But that's the bottom line is, did anyone ever mess with you? And one person burst into tears.
Wow.
I mean, this was this year, but I've had other people, when I get to that question, do you feel like anyone ever touched you inappropriately? The people who were messed by their family members have all immediately burst into tears and told me the story they've never told anyone else.
Okay.
So then I know what I'm working with, and I know I have a method to get them through to usually to a better place, for example. But when you have an unremembered trauma, that's kind of hard. There is no real source. So we have to kind of patch it together and see what seems most likely. And of course, the problem is that, let's say you're raised by alcoholics, you got no money, they move you around all the time, they give you to your relatives who you don't know or like, or put you in the foster system for a little bit. And, you got a lot of trauma. And that trauma has to be unraveled a little, but it's a harder trauma to come back from.
Now, Gloria, are there stopgaps in here that can say temporarily, you know, like the vacation to Tahiti or something like that, that can temporarily put a wall between you and that stress. I accept the fact that it's not going to work forever, but does it work at all?
In fact, of course it does, because, you know, ideally, you can do it without going to Tahiti. I can go to Tahiti without leaving my bedroom, because I've done an awful lot of meditation in my life, and I
Understood.
have a really good imagination. So I think it begins with the imagination. You know, that's how you are a writer, right? I mean, I can close my eyes and go into another world. And when I was a kid, I did it as a stress response. I disassociated from where I was and just lived in another reality in my head. And sometimes I'd be annoyed when people would break me out of it, especially my family, like, you know, what do you want for dinner? You know, no, don't make me think about real things, you know. But I've come to realize that what was a coping mechanism to get through life as a child actually can come in handy for me to take a vacation in my head.
Okay. Okay.
But the reality is what you're doing by going to Tahiti or going to Vegas and blowing some money, or maybe cheating on your partner. I mean, you know, whatever it is that medicates you. That naturally, the natural way, without drugs or alcohol, anything that mediates your stress, of course it's good for you. But you haven't resolved anything unless you work it all year round. And I don't know why we don't teach this to kids. Maybe we didn't understand the science as much as we do now, but I mean, if we ever have a completely revised curriculum, I think that the value of self-care, which is, you know, like Harvard Health Magazine is obsessed with it, and I think for good reason, because people don't take care of themselves.
True.
And in the modern world, we can't afford to do that. Long ago and far away, let's say 3 to 4 generations back, people had a lot of free time, and they didn't have television, and they didn't have radio. They had books, and they had to play instruments if they wanted music, usually.
Also true. Yes.
So, and they had the outdoors. And they really didn't have much, you know what I mean? They didn't have, you know, no one knew what was happening on the other side of the world. Up until the 19th century, you know, we would never have heard of the Ukraine. Or if we had, it would have been taken 6 months for the news to reach us. Or maybe never.
Yes.
Certainly if we lived in a farm in Missouri, would we have even heard of the Crimean War?
Agreed.
Okay, but now we have become vessels for overwhelming amounts of information.
Yeah.
And we have not evolved. We don't have so much larger a brain or so much larger personalities on the inside than our ancestors did. We can't accommodate all of that. And we don't have the kind of free time people used to have. When we're home and we're bored, we turn on the radio, we turn on our headphones, we turn on the TV, we get
Yes.
on the computer. And we're just a receiving system. And info is funneled to us, and all of it fucking stresses us out. So there are habits that I believe we must develop to live in the modern world. And to live in the 21st century. And I believe that we need to develop these new habits, that they are as important to our health. I've often said this, as you know, like masturbation is as important as brushing your teeth.
I never thought I would hear someone else say that besides me.
Yeah. And so are these other things, because I have like some habits that you have to get into. And the first one is not self-love, but self-compassion. Do you know what that is? It's the hot new thing.
Well, I understand compassion for others. You know,
I bet you do.
I was raised with that understanding of the human frailty and acceptance of it with all of its joys and its weaknesses. But, you know, I've that whole I expect better of me.
Yep, exactly. You know, somebody ought to tell us when we're kids, listen, you're a person like everybody else. See how flawed people are? Well, you're flawed too. There is no such thing as perfection.
Right.
Good. Everybody's going to have bad days. Everybody's going to fail. A failure doesn't mean anything. What a failure can do for you is teach you a lesson. And if you learn from it, it's not really a failure. It's called experience.
So far, we're good.
And
we're good.
You know what? You are the center of your universe, but not of the world. You got to cut yourself slack when you do stupid shit, because every one of us does.
The stupid shit, got it. Every one of us does, got it. Heaven knows I've done enough of my own. I was stupid enough to let 30,000 of my best friends read it. But it keeps coming back to, you should have known better.
No, you knew better after you did it, and you didn't get the result you wanted. Or you changed your mind about the result you wanted.
I understand that, but see, now you're talking.
Now it's time to say, I totally forgive myself. Wasn't I cute back then to be so naive? I won't do it again. That's it. It's over. You know.
No.
Yes. It's over as a drama.
All right. I'll give you that one. Yes. Yes. It's over as a drama.
That's all in that drama's in your head. That drama doesn't matter. Nobody, you know, if you think people shouldn't have liked that book, well, guess what? A lot of people did. They love you even more for it. And the ones that didn't, don't think any less of you for it. So there it is.
But things like, and again, I think part of it is the difference between, I shouldn't say dominant and submissive because I don't like either term, personality traits rather than.
Okay.
But I think within the service mind, in terms of, okay, I learned my lesson once, don't do that again, is one of those tapes that may play to some extent in the background. And since we're talking about stress, because it's not really a fear, the caution of, you know what your first mistake looks like. Don't go anywhere near something that looks like you could make the same mistake again.
I don't know if that's ever really, you know, well, this is where the self-compassion comes in.
Right. You know.
Which is, cut yourself some slack. Don't tell yourself, well, I made that mistake once, I'll never make it again. And if I am, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. No. We're human. You know, you can look at a situation and it doesn't look anything like what happened to you before, and you tell yourself, this is going to be good. And guess what? It turns out to be a carbon copy. Oops. So you say, well, there's my frailty right there. I'm going to look for XYZ red flags next time, but does it mean you never trust yourself again? You have to be strong enough to be willing to fail, or you'll never learn
Or
anything
you
new.
never learn. Agreed.
Well, that's life until you, as long as you are with us, my dear. At 100, you might have that on, you know, at 100, you might make the same mistake. Look at that cute kid. Oh, he has so much potential. I know that, blah, blah, blah. And then 3 weeks later, they took money out of your purse. You know, shit happens. You know why? You don't control the universe. That's why. Because other people have their flaws.
Agreed.
And when your flaw and their flaw walk hand in hand, you know, shit might happen, but you're going to survive it. And you're
When
going
you
to survive it.
yes. But the whole cut yourself some slack, yeah, because you've already put your foot in your mouth, take it out, don't add salt. I understand that. But
And don't sit around worrying you'll put your foot in your mouth again, because the
You're
next time you
going
put, you will, and you'll take it out again.
But-
And that's all of life. You know, you put it in, you take it out, you put it in.
But Gloria,
You
is
know-
that compassion really? Or just because compassion indicates forgiveness?
No,
Uh,
no, it doesn't. You know, you can feel compassion for somebody who fucked up their lives with drugs.
Agreed, but I'm talking
Or somebody who was molested as a kid, right? Some of them grow up and molest other people.
Yes.
I have compassion for their backstory. I feel terrible that they ended up being shitty people, but they did shit. They did shit knowing it was wrong.
Yes, but now let's talk about that self-compassion.
Right.
To self. Does
Mhm.
not compassion also indicate a certain amount of forgiveness?
Only for being human.
Oh,
Only for being vulnerable, frail, wanting to believe the best, wanting to have optimism and hope. But no, I mean, you may not, you know, there are things I don't really forgive myself for, but I forgive myself for not forgiving myself. I'm meta, baby.
and I suppose coming back to where we began this, that ability to have compassion may lessen. Notice I didn't say eliminate, but may lessen the stress load.
Correct. And if you have self-compassion, that's a really good, and that's what I work on actually. Like, for example, let's say I have a patient and their stress was caused by something terrible in childhood. It doesn't matter what it was.
Okay.
But somebody did them wrong in childhood, right? On some level. So I ask them, it's always great if they have kids, but not necessary, but knowing who they are as adults and how they feel, what would they do if that was their child or their niece or a young cousin or just some kid? How would they help that child? What would they say to that child? They'd say, the adult was wrong to do that to you.
Yeah.
You're a good person.
Yeah.
I love you. You have meaning in life. And what they did to you was wrong. And as long as I'm around, I'm going to protect you. And after they say that to that child, they have to say it to their inner child, because they are the adult now running their own life. They are their own mother or father, in a sense.
Interesting.
You know, so you, like a lot of people, I felt too, you know, oh, we were bad kids. We were horrible kids. God, we were a handful. No wonder our parents were mad. And then as the adult, you go and you look at it and you go, no, your parents were terrible. They didn't say the right things. They didn't do, or the adults you were with, they didn't allow you to be a child in some way. And they didn't show you compassion and mercy. And now they're gone, maybe. That's never going to happen. Or maybe you're estranged from them and it's never going to happen. Well, that need is still there. That little child still needs parenting. If you can do it for yourself, it's the most powerful of all.
Fascinating.
Because you're the one that has to forgive that kid and accept that this person was 5 or 7 or 9 and somebody came up to them and called them the N-word, and they had been living in this beautiful bubble and they didn't realize that people could still be that hateful.
Yeah, true.
I remember shit people said to me about being Jew, you know, anti-Semitic comments, or my first boyfriend was Black, and I remember a teacher saying something incredibly racist to me. And I was so hurt and shocked for years because I couldn't understand how anybody intelligent could act that way. I was like, don't you know about the Holocaust? You know, but I didn't say anything. I just absorbed it because I was a kid and he was an authority, and it plagued me. What did he mean? Girls like me don't date boys like that? I didn't even know what he meant by it at first.
I get it. I get it.
Right? And I was like, what do you mean like me? Well, you're Jewish. He was Jewish. He was a Jewish racist. So, you know, it was like, you know, and those things can stick with you. And if you remember episodes in your childhood where you were really shook by adult behavior, or you were the victim, or you believed your parents were getting divorced because of you, which most kids believe, you know, it's time to talk to that child and to parent them.
Mhm.
And we all have an inner child.
Yeah. Whether
You
we
know,
like it or not.
it's the deep down layer of identity. It's where our identity began, right? Now we have so many other layers to it and so many more dimensions. We may forget that it even exists, but it's there.
Or someone said my inner child is a mean little.
I think most children who had trauma grow up to be have a lot of buried rage. That's what scared me about being a femdom, actually. Because I came to terms with the fact that I had a lot of inner rage, and I thought, do I want to hit people because I'm angry? That's not right. Or I thought, I was afraid I could go out of control, that I'd start hitting somebody and then I would go insane. Because I knew I had a lot of anger in me, which I had never even considered until I got involved in our world. But I think a lot of us do, actually. And that, you know, one of the beautiful evolutions of being into S&M is learning not to let it run you in reality.
Or to enjoy it.
Yeah. Not to enjoy being angry, yeah, is important. So, yeah, these things are very complicated, and as I said, very, very individual. But I would say that Harvard Magazine is their health magazine, you know, self-compassion comes up, if not once a month, once every couple of months as an
Curious.
important article. And I believe them because they're looking at it from a medical point of view.
All right.
And why are they concerned? They're concerned the way I'm concerned, to realize that stress is the beginning of breaking down good health, mentally and physically. So what can you do? Well, you can't just tell somebody, you know, feel better about yourself. You know, you have to get them to really talk to their old memories, and that can be very painful, which is why you probably want somebody who will be there to stabilize you in case you know, start crying or want to scream, you know, which is acceptable under those circumstances, you know, but there are better ways of dealing with it. And it's helpful to have somebody who says, you know what, don't scream, go beat a pillow. You know, redirect it in a safe way. But so I'll give you examples of the kinds of things I get my clients to do. First, it can be very helpful, even though it's not a cure for anything, but it can make you feel better to do like a daily mantra or a daily affirmation.
Okay.
You know, like, I've proved to myself that I'm a pretty powerful person who gets shit done, right? You remind yourself of that. You make up your own. I do it with my clients. When I intuit what the nature of their problem is, I give them an affirmation for that. So, you know, I need to nurture my inner child if they're working on that. I need to, you know, I'm a good person. I am a good person. You know, just repeat to yourself your top belief about yourself, your top positive belief, instead of giving room for that negative tape to play in your head. For all the amount of time that people give to the, you're a fuck up, you're stupid, you can't do this.
Thank you.
Okay? If you let any of that negativity in your head, you need to compensate by running positivity through your head. Because you're not gonna, yeah, you're replacing the voice with a better, saner voice. And there are a range of mindfulness things you can do to deal with that too. Like, people who sign up for my newsletter learn about the rubber band technique, which is one of the big tricks in mindfulness, which is anytime you want to stop thinking about something, you wear a rubber band around your wrist. And when you find yourself going down that rabbit hole, you give yourself a snap.
It's a very curious conditioning.
That's exactly what it is. You're deconditioning yourself. Because you see, all of these coping mechanisms, but that aren't coping mechanisms, but they feel like a coping mechanism. Like, when you feel confused, you're going to hear a negative parent's voice in your head because some level you feel like you need them to make the decision for you. And that comes out of your insecurity. So I like to remind myself, if I take my mother's opinion, I would have ended up with my mother's life.
2 points.
You know, if I let her scare me or talk me away from doing what I know is right and moral, I will end up seldom right and rarely moral by my standards. Like, it was moral to her to do shit that I thought was immoral, You know, but by my standards, I had a higher standard because I read a lot, you know. You know, and she's like, don't risk it, don't do that. And I would always feel like, no, it's worth the risk. So then I do like, I give people homework, right? Which everybody who's struggling with stress should do. And the first thing is making sure that you're actually fucking taking care of your body. Because you live in a body. You may not feel like you live in a body until you have a lot of pain. But you live in a body. And that body requires daily, even robust maintenance. And what I mean by robust is not getting up and taking a vigorous walk. What I mean by robust is, I mean quality of care. So for example, I have people who come to me, and when I start asking them about their daily habits, which I always do with people who are suffering from depression and or stress, I start with, okay, so when do you go to sleep and when do you wake up? And if they tell me, oh, I don't know, I go to sleep whenever I feel like it and I wake up when I wake up, I know right away something's wrong. They can't possibly be at their best because adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night to be healthy. That's medicine. Yeah. And by 7 to 9 hours, we don't mean getting up to pee 4 times and answering phone calls during the night. I mean, your body needs REM sleep. It needs all stages of sleep.
True.
And very few people, particularly in the technological world, where we stay on our devices till we pass out and we open our device first thing in the morning, you know, very few people have an opportunity to empty their mind and be able to sleep.
Agreed. Agreed.
So it's really, really hard to get control of a sleep cycle, but it can be done because I've thought I was the last person in the world who could ever do it. And I've forced myself to start doing it after my husband died, because I knew that was a big area of weakness for me. Because I went to sleep 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning and woke up at 11, 12, 1.
Mhm.
I didn't know. The nature of my work enables me to live like that if I choose to. But I knew it was a really unhealthy pattern and that my brain would be clearest if I had enough sleep.
Interesting.
And the same thing with food. It isn't just, did you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which, by the way, are not requirements for good health, despite the propaganda out there. What's really important is what you're putting into your mouth. Are you getting enough protein in your diet? Do you have enough, enough carbs to run on? Are you trying to eat food that actually nourishes your body?
True.
So that you're not dependent on vitamins and supplements and all that crap? Some vitamins are good. I don't want to put vitamins down, but basically all supplements are crap. Everything can be directly sourced from the food you eat. And not just the food you eat, you really do have to drink enough water during the day to have a stable mood. So I always check with people on shit that you would think most MDs ask about, but oddly enough, they don't.
They don't.
No.
I can't even think of well, for instance, my primary care
Mhm.
knows, most of the things that I do for a living, not the specs, but he knows that I work with the stock market. He knows that I work with a library. And he knows that I travel and lecture. I can't remember the last time he asked me about uh, self-care, real self-care,
Yeah,
in terms of sleep pattern.
right. I mean, all you have to do is really, just try to keep a record for 1 or 2 weeks of when you went to sleep and when you got up, when you ate, if you ate, and what you ate. Don't worry about calories. Don't worry about fat. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, was there enough real food in your week? Or did you spend a whole week eating fast food? Because if you did, you're not a friend to yourself, and you know it. You're just not being your own ally. And so food, sleep, hydration, right? And there's another side of that, which is physical self-care. Because again, we live, our brains, which we think are ourselves, are not ourselves. It's our whole body that is ourself.
Agreed.
Our gut has an opinion
Oh, yeah.
about everything, more than we ever thought. It's sort of like an ancillary brain, you know? So, but really every part of our body on some level is conscious. Your foot knows when it's hurt and it tells your brain, and your brain goes, oh no, let
Agreed.
me try, helping you. Maybe I can send you some shit down your system to get to your foot that might help you a little bit. It's everything is working all the time inside you. It's just an orchestra every day, all day.
Now, next question in dealing with the concept of care. Will the care begin to, in and of itself, maybe ebb away at a little bit of stress?
A lot. That's why I think, self-compassion diminishes stress, because you stop being angry at yourself and you start giving yourself a healthy internal narrative. Like,
Okay.
I'm okay. Yes, I fail, but all right, maybe I do forgive, I forgive myself for being human. Yes, I failed, but the greatest people on earth, they all had very public failures. They pick up and they go back to it. That's the beauty of longevity, is that you can look back and realize, Jesus, I fucked up every year. But my life went on. I learned from it. I made some changes. But yes, this is, in other words, learning to take care of what your brain needs, which is affirmation. Okay, because I'm going to tell, I was going to get to that, all right? But like physical self-care, right? You have to keep up with your grooming and you have to move around. Even if you're in a chair, a wheelchair, even if you have some part of your body that isn't working, there is something you can do and you need to do it. People get themselves into a lot of trouble by sitting in front of the TV for 6 hours.
True.
Or sitting in front of their keyboard
Computer or whatever. Yeah.
for 3 hours. You have to get up and move around. Ideally, you're doing some light exercise that you can do, whatever that may be for you, your age, your physical situation, whether everything's working or there are things that aren't working or things that are the wrong size or whatever it might be. You can still do something, and you need to, because being sedentary is the new smoking cigarettes. Being sedentary is as bad as smoking cigarettes, as being a heavy smoker. Your lungs need you to do shit. Your
Interesting
heart needs you to
perspective.
do shit. Your spine needs you to move around.
Is that then part of the natural answer to the information, the need for the information disconnect?
I'm sorry, what? What are you asking me?
If that brain is, for instance, information overloaded, which is so common today, because
Yes,
we are inundated,
it's the norm.
is the body's sudden need to get up and move, or just to get up and move? The body.
Well, sometimes you lose your body's sense of telling you to get up and move because you're cozy, comfy in bed. And then it has to be your conscious mind saying, I need to get up and move, and I'm going to do it. It's not easy for people.
True, very true.
It's not easy unless you're manic, But for other people, look at all the temptations. We got DoorDash, we got TV, and we got internet. I mean, most people I've talked to during COVID, who, if they didn't have to work, they were getting in muumuus and sandals and just being passive receptacles of stimulation. And that is it's a bad, bad way to live. You're basically living like a head in a jar.
Gloria, is it a passive receptacle of information, or is it an obsessive receptacle of information?
It can be both.
Because you had said before, and I was thinking in terms of my own life and my own work habits and work schedule. I'm up, I finish my morning meditation and then my morning prayers. But by 9 o'clock, if I haven't looked at the stock market scroll at least once, I feel like I'm slacking off.
No, because that's an unrealistic standard. Why do you need, here you go. Unless you're a day trader and you need to get out of a stock fast every day, or you need to have that kind of flexibility because you're trading options or something, are you doing that?
Only at times. It depends on what the market is doing on any given day. But it's that.
I mean, if you need to be responsive to the market, then you need to be responsive to the market. But if you're just watching your portfolio out of morbid curiosity and a need to know, it's a compulsion.
Compulsion or habit. And the reason for the question is that information overload that is so common to damn near all of us who are living in Western societies. I'm wondering at this point if it's almost hardwired. The need for.
No, but it's very easy. What people don't realize is that it is really easy to train yourself into a bad habit. It's crack.
Yes, agreed.
It really is, because that habit probably gives your brain a drug boost. And once you start training yourself that way, it's very hard to break it, but you can, because if you trained yourself into it, you can train yourself out of it. The shit that people need help with is either learning how to train themselves out of patterns that they formed on their own as adults versus a force that is beyond them, like an unconscious memory or having been traumatized, which lodges something in their subconscious mind. So like, what did you used to have to do first thing in the morning? Have sex?
Yeah, at least masturbate. But actually, those first three thoughts of the morning are where's the coffee, let out the dog, gotta pee. Not necessarily in that order.
There we go. That's my morning routine. Coffee, dogs, and bees for everybody.
It's like in talking to friends who especially during this COVID period, who have teased me about, the amount of books in the house, for instance. Well, when I am conscious of it, especially in the spring and summer, the idea of binge watching something is foreign to me. And the only time I've done it once in my life, I would rather go out and sit on the deck and watch a cardinal.
Now that is exactly what's missing in most people's lives. Making time to feel like you're part of the natural world. And not just an alien drifting through the surreal world we actually live in, where you get into a uncomfortable vehicle and you ride to an office and you're hot and you're cold and people are terrible and people are coughing and you get paranoid. And, everything in modern life takes its toll on us emotionally because we are very, very, very sensitive creatures, humans. We make fun of dogs because, they hear a squirrel and they lose their minds. But we're kind of the same way. We hear a news story and we lose our minds. We just don't bark. But on the inside, we're going, what is it? I'm going to kill you. What is it? I'm going to kill you.
Or kill it.
Or kill it.
Or
yeah.
kill it.
Yeah.
But now breaking away from those habits, or let's not even say habits, because that's probably a bigger bite to chew than the average person is ready for. Breaking away from
anybody with a library like yours, you got to have OCD to some degree.
I think I resemble that remark.
Look, can you walk past books that you can feel are crying at you and saying, please take us away from this terrible place where no one needs us? Well, that's how hoarders start out, right?
The difference between a hoarder and an archivist is I can tell you where it is. That's the difference.
There are other different, but also that you impose an order on them.
Yeah.
The order you think is correct, which is very relaxing to an OCD person.
Yes.
Knowing where that book is. I'm sure when people come through and they move your books around, and you can't find one again, it must drive you to distraction.
To some extent, if it gets moved around and I don't need it, I'll find it eventually. If it gets moved around and someone says, I need the article in San Utopia Guardian 30 on Cynthia Slater, and I know where it was, and then I realize that when I go to get it, it's not there, then I'm a little obsessive. Or if so many things get moved that there's a gap, then I'm a little obsessive. But otherwise, because I'm kind of out of, I'm running out, or I'm having to make more. That's it. I'm having to make more space. I cannot free every book that I walk by from its prison and bring them home to be with their siblings. I can only free some of them.
I know you have secret relationships with your book that
Yeah.
we don't know about,
Well,
that nobody knows.
yeah.
As open as you are, you have relationship. Well, yeah. So of course, you're going to be a stress sponge.
Or stress relief on occasion. I guess for me,
What's the relief is getting that book you wanted.
or
I
losing
bet that's a
myself
great day.
in a different form of stress rather than the usual. Jill swears the only reason I created the rare book room in the library was that to have a place to get away from everybody. Because more than likely, if you go looking for me, knowing that I'm in one of two buildings, more than likely you are going to find me in the rare book room with, something curled up around me, possibly my glasses to my nose, and I'm sound asleep. But it's a different
Right.
form of
So it's a
stress,
place of peace. Yeah. You should go there more often, maybe.
which then makes it peaceful because I've changed out one type of stress for another. Now that's a question rather than a statement.
It's not a stress if it makes you happy. Basically, this is about, okay, so affirmations and prayer. I would have added prayer because I think prayer, I don't think prayer reaches anybody else, but I do think it reaches ourselves.
Agreed. And it is its own connect. If you take
It is its
the
own
religious
connection.
concept out of it,
Right. And I believe that
that's a different
actually
thing.
the act of bowing your head and kind of speaking to yourself out loud or telling God what your problems are and asking for strength is the beginning of getting that strength.
Or speaking to the universe about it, or however, because prayer in and of itself has way too many religious connotations rather than simply offering up thoughts to the universe or giving energy to the universe, which is where we take it from anyway.
Right.
Uh,
So getting your body to a place where you are satisfied that even if it isn't perfect, it's better than it was.
okay.
What you really want to do, and here's what I think. No science on this, but I believe this from reading all the science. So take it for what it's worth. I believe that our brain knows when we want to live.
Interesting.
And I believe, that study about if you force yourself to smile every day, you use the smile muscles, that you can trick your brain into thinking you're happier than you are. And your brain starts making the happy chemicals and you get happier.
Huh.
Because like I said, our whole body is hooked to the brain. Our body registers when the muscles in our face make a smile. And when our muscles in our face make a smile, our brain goes, oh, wow, face is telling me it's happy. That's not the clinical term.
Yeah, but it works. I get it.
All right. Face is telling brain, hey, we're smiling at something. Let's choke out a few smile more chemicals.
Kick a chemical out there. Okay, got it.
Well, the same thing happens with your whole body, right? So for example, if you think pussy is the cause of all sorrow, your brain doesn't want you to have sex.
Reinforced conditioning.
Self-reinforced conditioning. So, for example, what is the things that people do when they get depressed? They don't eat regularly, they don't sleep regularly, they quit grooming, and they tend to lie around a lot.
Okay, yeah, I've seen more than enough of that and read enough of it.
And what that tells the brain, and the brain goes dark. Have you ever seen those pictures of a happy brain versus a depressed brain?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so happy brains are all lit up because everything is working
Just
up there.
firing off, right.
And sad brain is like, has just shut down or is shutting down the stuff that makes a person produce the happy chemicals and the sexy chemicals and the positive reinforcement that we get from our own brain chemistry.
Okay.
Okay. Or when you have stress, stress creates bad chemistry in your body. You are more inclined to get signals that you should be anxious and fearful from stress. And they work against the positive brain chemistry, right? This is so unscientific as to be ridiculous, but I'm trying to put it in layman's terms.
Let's just call it abbreviated version.
Okay, we'll call it that. All right. So your brain knows when your body is performing better,
Okay.
getting better nutrition, looking spiffy, able to pick things up and move around and walk when you want to. You know, and it feels like your body feels like very alive, and your brain knows it. And the problem with depression and stress is that you don't feel so alive. So there are stress busters. I mean, I have a million other, you know, like the rubber band trick or the this thing or the mantra or the, you know, that I tailor to an individual. I don't give them to groups. But what I can do here is say that in addition to praying and self-affirmation, actual care of your physical body and self-compassion and even self-care, like going into your rare book room, sitting outside and staring at cardinals, spending time with your pet, like quality bonding time with the pet. All pets are comfort animals, in my view.
True.
And people don't spend enough time reaping the comforts. They think of their animals as like an activity friend. But they can be some, and it doesn't have to be a cat or a dog. It can be a hamster, a guinea pig, or a bird, you know. It can be anything, but somewhere, something that is also alive, where your time with them is just a little vacation from the world.
Yeah.
You know, and if you can do that stuff on a near daily basis, and everything I'm telling you to do is really a fraction of your overall time, because, you know, prayers and affirmation, 5 minutes, and you can do it in bed.
Yeah.
You know, before you actually stand up, you know, put an alarm clock for when you're supposed to go to bed, and an alarm clock for when, you know, ideally when you want to be in bed, and another alarm for when you want to be up, and try to follow that alarm.
Routine.
You know, just obey the alarm. For me, I put self-care for years on my Google Calendar with a notification. Because I used to be
Wow.
really shitty about it.
Okay.
I could just sit at my computer for 14 hours. And boy, did I get depressed a lot. Now I know, even if I don't feel high stress, but if I know, like I've had a very heavy session with somebody,
Mhm.
you know, being a therapist also sometimes raises your own struggles.
Yeah.
So I know I will go somewhere with my headphones and a dog, at least one dog, and either sit outside if the weather's nice or lie down on my bed and give myself 5 to 10 minutes to recalibrate. And it makes a world of difference. It really does. I'm also very fond of what is it? Napsturbation. When I have a high level of stress and I still have to keep working, I take a half an hour, I jerk off and take a short nap. And I wake up feeling marvelous.
The jerk off, I understand. I wish I could fall asleep that quickly.
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm tired all the time. I don't have a problem. I don't usually have a problem falling asleep. And if I do breathing exercises.
That
Breathing exercises are just as good as a daily affirmation. They really are, but people don't usually, I don't know why, there's a lot of resistance to learning how to do a breathing exercise or
you know,
remembering to do it. Yeah.
I found myself, when the voice still worked well, doing 10 deep breaths an hour just to see how it changed the oxygenation in my bloodstream.
And
Just to watch it, before I'd start the deep breathing, I'd put the little thing on the finger and go, 97. Take it off, put it down. 10 minutes later, after 10 serious deep breaths and the ritual breathing, give it 5 minutes, put it back on. Went up 2 points. Okay, we're good.
imagine if for the very longest time, I did 5 to 10 minutes of breathing at least once and usually twice a day.
Mhm.
And that was to control anxiety.
See,
And that is now my go-to when I feel my stress going up also. I mean, when I'm really, really anxious and I'm like hyperventilating, I go off and I breathe.
for me, it was just to see, to expand my capacity to hold a note for the sheer
That
gins
keep
and
doing, yeah, but it actually has long-term benefits in life.
yeah.
Mhm.
Aside from just the basics of stretching the lungs to their capacity and reminding them that they can get this big, is helping to absorb more oxygen into the bloodstream, as well as reminding the lungs that they can take in this amount of air on their own with a certain amount of practice.
And it slows your heart and your pulse, which is really critical for people our age.
Or with high blood pressure, although, the high blood pressure can be related to other things. But it was just, wait a minute, you can't hold that note as long as you used to. Inhale.
Yeah.
And then,
But conscious breathing is it's just not for everybody. I mean, out of all the people listening to this, I'll be surprised if 1 in 20 actually pick it up.
and part of it is after 10 good deep breaths, even to change rooms in the house, you notice the different scent in different rooms.
Yeah.
If I have left this room, my general office, gone outside to do 10 serious deep breaths in fresh air, and then come back into my office, what I'm suddenly appreciating, as much as I love the fresh air, is I can smell the aroma of old books.
Right, because it clarifies you.
Yeah.
For some people, they come back and their brain feels easier. For some people, in other words, you're more alive. Okay? Which goes back to this whole thing that I really believe your brain knows when you want to live.
Which in and of itself is going to be a topic for next week, because I want to come back to if the brain can be triggered to feeling more alive and upbeat, can wanting to live suppress the stress that is triggering the brain to not want to live? If you followed that bouncing ball.
I do follow the bouncing ball, but it's hard for me to say, it's the chicken and the egg thing.
Agreed.
But wanting to live, I believe, prolongs life in itself.
Versus just existing.
Correct. And by doing these various rituals, this is what, by talking to God or talking to your angel or talking to yourself or following somebody's affirmation on an app, and saying it with them, whatever it is that fits with who you are, it's a good thing because it means you have hope and your brain is listening to you have hope. Hope, that's a good thing for living.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And you know how you feel when how we all feel when we think we look our best, when we got some cool new outfit, or we just did something fun with our hair, or we did something, we shaved a certain way, including our genitals, whatever it might be, shaved our face, shaved our genitals, whatever we did, and we feel cuter. That's a good thing. That says to our brain, we still want to be sexy.
You have also just used another word that is far too long, I think, to get into here. But I want to talk to you about hope.
I'd love to talk to you about hope and why somebody like me is so optimistic when I have had a dark life, a bad childhood, and a recent death that I never thought I could handle. And yet, as you know, I came back in a few weeks and was back to posting jokes and helping other people. And, it's weird. But I really think it's because I've done what the science tells me to do.
And
science of whole body wellness.
That's
except for my smoking.
That's going to be that one, and want to live versus existing. I think those are going to be our next
very important for S&Mers.
Because hope has such, one, it's an interesting word. Two, it's an amazing concept. Three, it has some very interesting mythological history to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, we're animals, right?
You're here.
When your dog stops being happy, it's bad.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to live that much longer.
Also true.
Why do you think people are different? I mean, why does anyone think people are different?
2 points, maybe 3 points center shot on that.
Your brain knows when you're ready to lie down and die. And it helps you. Thank you, brain. That's bigger than the brain. That's, whatever, the immortal spirit within, the character, I don't know what it is, but it's the force of life. Hope, optimism, and an ability and desire to move forward.
You notice I'm jotting that one down too.
I want to keep you here forever. You blew
Unfortunately,
me away when you were saying I might only have another 10 years. Are you kidding me, girl? No.
no, I'm being realistic, mostly because I don't know if I ever told you, I had a little trip to the other side, and it was
Yeah.
pretty damned awesome. But, you know, the reality of life, because, you know, the concept, I don't fear dying. I don't fear death. Dying, I would rather be in a certain amount of control of. I'm either going out of here in my sleep or at the height of an orgasm, although that could freak out whoever I'm with. You know, would love to be able to control the exit.
Well, I'm going to answer the big question everybody has. What is the meaning of life?
For me,
No, in general, what is the meaning of life?
to collect enough memory / energy, however you want to define it, to be able to put it back in the universe in a different form.
Well, this is, and after I say this, you got to hit stop the recording, but you know, I think that the meaning of life is to live.
In order to collect those memories, that energy, whatever,
but you have to live. You have to live life.
Not exist.
Not exist, not be afraid to live, not to fill yourself with all the warnings that people gave you, all the scared people in your life who told you no, or said you can't do that at that age, or you shouldn't do that, blah, 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 blah. No. The meaning of life is to live it as long as you're alive. To get all the juice out of it if you can.
To experience it, to learn from it, to
enjoy it. Yeah.
And actually, whoops, no wonder he's screaming at me. Gloria, did you ever see a Robin Williams movie called To Die, Perchance to Dream, to Sleep? Was one of his best, where he has to go effectively to hell to get his wife back. To Sleep, Perchance to Dream, I think it is. It's taken from a Shakespeare quote.
Right.
I'm sorry, What Dreams May Come. It's the tale.
Oh, what dreams may come.
Dream.
To sleep, perchance to dream. There's the rub.
What dreams may come when we have shoveled off this mortal coil.
Yeah, that's Hamlet.
I found the movie fascinating.
Okay.
Because of its concept of eternity and how the spirit, whatever you define it, how it exists once it leaves the ugly bag of mostly water.
Yes.
And the concept, the end talks about the fact that the spirit gets either freed from, rejoices in, and is boosted by its experiences during life, so that it brings back all of that joy of life, the joie de vivre, back into that universal pool, or it gets bogged down in its own brain to the point where its hell of sorts is the bitterness that it cannot escape. And either way, it's made by the person while they exist. And I find the concept coming up a lot as an adult. I've looked back at different movies, even with Dickens' A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
The first spirit says, I wear the chains I made in life. I made them link by link and yard by yard. And now after life, he's bogged down in what is effectively his own bullshit, rather than being able to escape that mortal coil with the joy that should have been part of the experience of life. And it's interesting that I see it so often. Will you shut up? They're screaming at me. I let them.
Yeah, we have to go. I have to go. It's 3:00.
We both need to go. Shame on us. But you have brought up a couple of things that I am tacking on the computer, because the concept of hope and the want to live versus the existence of living are two things that, when we talk about stress and the many different facets of stress, I think are going to make for, as we look back on all of this, some interesting discussion. And since hope takes more than one person, we will get into the group mind, which is something we had talked about before, and how the group helps us live. So on that note, Dr. Gloria Brame and one of her favorite fans signing off for now.